He was in too much of a hurry to make money, and he ended up buying all his shares, and the guy disappeared. Nobody even knows where he is. And one of the reasons why I love Warren Buffett is because his approach is long term. And in fact, every entrepreneur, every investor that I've met, they think who are successful, they think in terms of decades versus weeks and months. But if you're in a survival world, you will always think in terms of weeks and months. I remember I had my board where I had my 10.
I know there's a lot of people out there who are struggling with that idea of like building their business versus the time with their young kids. And so I'm doing the best I can with blending both of those, but just wanted to hear your viewpoint on that and what you did to kind of balance that and still be around, and what you advise your clients to do.
Yeah, you might not like my answer.
Okay.
But just to add, amplify your point that you mentioned, which is very powerful right before this, and I'll answer this question. While you're on this journey of trying to build boundaries, trying to create a path forward, one of the most crucial pieces, just remember that the people around you who haven't done what you've done, what you're trying to do, they're not going to be able to give you the right advice. They're not going to be able to give you the right support. They just don't know that path, not because they're evil or malice or anything like that. And they're going to try to protect you, and it will look like holding on to you because they're scared, and for you and for themselves. But you will need a group of people to support you. And one of the biggest reasons why I grew is because I was also constantly around other people who were either doing it or have done this path. And I was, whether those were I did a lot of it. I did online masterminds, but I went to in-person events as well. Don't do this alone behind in your current space, because you will always snap back. I didn't realize how much. I'll share this with you. I was in a group of business owners and coaches. It was part of my certification, and we all volunteered to meet every week and give each other feedback. And I was trying different things in businesses. I was getting frustrated a couple of years in, and I tried this. Let me just stay around these people. And I started meeting them a couple of times a week, and I would try a couple of things, and I'll be like, I'll go into that mastermind, I would share it, and somebody will be like, "Oh, that's a really good idea." It's like, "Oh, really?" I was like, "Okay, great." And they're like, "I'm gonna try this part of it." And then I would go and try it and come back just like, "Oh, that's brilliant." I didn't realize how important it was for me to hear those things at the time, because all I heard was, "This is not gonna work. That's not gonna work." And my own thoughts were garbage at the time. It would be like, because I realized I had a huge need for that to be reflected, because I was holding on to very little hope, and I needed other people to affirm that. And the people around me did not understand my path, did not, even my wife, who was incredibly supportive, she wasn't doing that. She was focused on other things. So she didn't know what I was doing half the time. So that actually helped me build the confidence and the motivation to stay on that path. So crucial. So I just wanted to amplify that point. Be around other people, whether you need to go to in-person, online, be around a group of people who are trying this and have done this. Don't do it alone. You will always snap back to what you were. A lot of people give up because of that. Now, in terms of children, so I made a decision. Actually, I'll start with Warren Buffett. So Warren Buffett was asked this question. So a lot of people don't know he had two partners in the beginning, not one partner. It wasn't just Charlie Munger. Charlie Munger is famous as his partner. But initially, when he was starting out, he had a third partner. And there was an interview he was in. He was asked, what happened to that third partner? And he actually talked very highly of him. He was very intelligent, probably even smarter than Warren Buffett when it came to investments. And he had this one answer. He's like, he was in too much of a hurry to make money. He was in too much of a hurry to make money. And he ended up buying all his shares, and the guy disappeared. Nobody even knows where he is. And one of the reasons why I love Warren Buffett is because his approach is long term. And in fact, every entrepreneur, every investor that I've met, they think who are successful, they think in terms of decades versus weeks and months. But if you're in a survival world, you will always think in terms of weeks and months. I remember I had my board where I had my 10-year plan on it, and it was in my office. One of my family members walked in one day, And I don't talk about that stuff normally, but she's like, what is that? And it's like 2001, 2015, 18, 19, 20, 21, like the whole 10 years. And there's like columns, there's a whole plan. It's like a battle board. And I'm like, oh, that's my 10-year plan. She's looked at me, she's like, I don't even know what I'm doing next week. I'm like, I can help with that. But and it's not, and it's funny, but this is how most people think. They think day to day. That's not how wealthy people think. They think in terms of decades and maybe even centuries at times. If you study history, some of the people who built this world, you might not like them, but they thought in terms of 100-year increments, not even their own life. And entrepreneurs think in terms of decades for a reason, because you can't do much in a few months, in 6 months. You will always overestimate that. But what you can do in 5 years, it will completely transform. You can completely reshape yourself, your life, your business. You will be in a completely different circle. In 5 years, you can completely transform your life. In 10 years, you will not be that person that you were 10 years ago. So thinking in terms of decades was very big. And when I understood that, I asked myself in the beginning, what path am I on? And I still remember one of the closest people to me one day, it was in a family chat. We had a conflict, and again, it was a boundary issue. I didn't know how to deal with it, but he's a person very close to me, and he's like, it was 2.5 years, and he's like, I don't know why the hell you're doing this thing. You've barely made a dime. I don't know why you quit this lucrative career. You keep taking your family this way, and like, and this is a family chat. I was so furious. Like he was attacking me, my wife. I didn't respond because I know I would react and I would say something that will break the relationship. I paused on it. I thought about it that whole night. But actually, that opened up something really powerful in me. So, and I was grateful that he even said that, even though it didn't come from a good place. Um, that night, it was very painful to think about it, feel it, sit with it. And I asked myself, what is my reaction? And my reaction was, I was furious. I was angry. But what was I angry about? He was right. I hadn't made a dime. I was struggling, and I risked a lot of things on that path. But then, why am I doing this? And that question was so important. I was like, you know what? I don't care if it takes 2 years, 5 years, or 10 years. I'm going to be on this path. And I'm going to figure this out. It was a moment of decision for me. And that was actually my response to him. I was like, this is going to be our life. We're going to struggle. And I know you might not understand our choices, but I'm going to do this until I make it happen, whether it's 2 years, 5 years, or 10 years. And that moment, actually, from there on, I just focused on long term. And so here's what I learned. And it was a promise that I also made to my wife, that no matter what happens, I know I'm going on a difficult path. We are going on a difficult path. And I remember right before jumping in, we went on a 3-week vacation with the debt money that we had. And I'm like, this might be the last vacation we go for a long, long time. But I did tell her that I'm going to go on this, but I'm not going to sacrifice our family. I'm not going to sacrifice you. I'm not going to sacrifice my kid. I'll be there. And I had to prioritize what mattered. And my time with my child mattered at the time. And people might not understand this, but children don't know what the hell you're doing. They have no view of the world outside. So when you're constantly going outside, all they know is that you're not there for them. Your wife might know, your husband might know. They have a better view of it if you're communicating better. But children have no idea. So when they're growing up and they don't see you, they might realize that later on, but it creates emotional blueprints in them that tells them that, you know what, the person that cares about you the most is not there. Now, that balance looks different to different people. I'm not saying spend all your hours with your kids when you're trying to build a business. But the decision I made was that even if I had that 1 hour with my daughter, with my family, I'll be fully there, no matter how much my mind pulls me towards business, because that hour is important to me. I'll be present with them. And I tried to do that a lot. And that was very intentional. There are times where I failed. Thank you for joining us here for this video. We've noticed that there are a certain percentage or a high percentage of our audience haven't subscribed to our channel. If you can please click on the button to subscribe to the channel, it will help us create more content. It will help us, which will help us reach more amazing people like you, to support them, to serve them. So please click on the subscribe button, and I'll see you on the next video. Thank you. Bye. And I also told myself that, you know what, as much as I wanted to fast forward that and I wanted to work 100 hours, this is a long-term path. It's not a short-term path. A lot of people make the mistake of spending more hours than they need to on their business and forget about their family, their well-being, and other things. It's not necessary. I train other coaches and business owners as well, and I tell them, and in their mind, they're like, I need to spend 30 hours a week on top of my job to do this. Not really. And they also hear this from other entrepreneurs: work 80 hours. That might be true for somebody who's single, doesn't have a family. Great, go work 80 hours, 100 hours, make your dreams come true. But if you have a family and if you have kids and you spend the first 10 years of their life and you're not there most of the time, and when you are there, you're in your head and you're not fully there with them, or you're not trying to be there with them, that's going to stay with them for the rest of their life. Not just with them, they're going to pass that on to the next generation. That's not that. So what I did, that was a decision that I'm going to go a little bit slow in the beginning, but I will maintain my relationship and I'll maintain my sanity in the process. So it took me a little bit, and I'll tell you what happened. So right now, in the certification that I went through as a high performance coach, I'm still a certified high performance coach. A couple of years back, actually last year, we were at a conference with 500 plus certified high performance coaches. There are at this point 1,300 of them in the whole world, and it's a very expensive certification. It's one of the best in the world. And out of all the people who had started a decade ago, at the time it was 9 years ago, 9 years I had been there, and our trainer, the head trainer, he got everybody who had been certified and had built a business for that long to get up, and he acknowledged them. And of all the people that had been certified, so this is how he got it started. He's like, now for everybody who has been a certified high performance coach he got everybody to get up. Everybody who has been a coach for 2 years, he celebrated them. He's like, sit down. And then 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. At the end, there were about 6, 7 left at 8-year mark. At 9-year mark, there were four people left. One of them was me. The other one was my business partner, and 2 other people I know where their businesses are at. At 10-year, I sat down because it had been 9 years. There were 3 people left. Those were out of 1,000 plus people who had been certified. Those were the only ones who were left who had built a business. Most people will fail on this path, not because it's not possible for a lot of people, but because most people will give up because they will overload themselves in their life. People will create divorces. People will create broken families because they're trying to rush the process, not because the process is so hard to build. It is hard to build, but if you take it know your long-term path and take it one day at a time, and understand that you have responsibilities towards yourself, towards your family, and towards the business as well. And look always towards the long term. I knew that if I delayed it by a year, that wouldn't be the end of the world on the business side, but it will save my marriage. It will save my relationship with my children. So it took me about 3 years to get up, but then I accelerated afterwards because I built some skill sets. I built the network. And before I knew it, the people who were way ahead of me, I'm at this point considered as one of the top 10% in that group. A lot of them fell behind. Why? Because they struggled with their marriage. Many of them, I know them. Some of them are my friends. They struggled with their finances because they took too many unnecessary risks. They struggled with their own well-being because their health declined after a while. Their motivation declined. Their habits broke down. And because they were trying to rush the process. A lot like Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner. I don't even know his name because he's not relevant anymore. But Charlie Munger is relevant, even though he recently passed away. But that decision helped save my marriage, helped save my relationship with my kids. And over time, and again, my attention was on quality, not quantity. A lot of people think about quantity when it comes. have regular quantity, but when you are with your kids, when you are with your family, be there fully. Put aside your stuff, set an intention to be there fully with them because they're just as important as your business. Because when you do make it, if they're not there, it will be the most pointless thing you're gonna do in your life.
Yeah.
I know that was a
I,
long way to answer that.
No, no, but that was a great, perfect answer. And the one thing I do want to say, like I've been um really encompassing that and being, especially this year, there's been a lot going on family wise and with my daughters and stuff like that. And I always had that mindset of like balancing and spending more time with them, being intentional with the time I'm spending with them. But it's definitely this year hit home even more. But I love the idea of creating the 10-year board. It's so hard for people to think 10 years because they don't know what they're doing next week because they're thinking in the week by week and they don't even think about like what their 10-year journey or their goal is going to be because oh maybe they get in their head so many things could change and I don't know 10 years I'm going to plan for that. You start the plan and then you backtrack it, you retroactively say okay what do I'm doing, what am I doing in 5 years and what am I doing in 3 and then 1 and then build up like you said go day by day. But if you have that long-term vision, going slowly doesn't affect you as much because you know that that's part you're still on track for what that 10-year goal is going to be. And my journey has been slow, but it's been because I'm trying to balance all these various things. So I wanted to thank you for outlining that and not letting people get I guess influenced by everyone else who's like, "Oh, go fast, grind, go hard," like what this grind culture that's out there. But you don't know their lifestyle. Like they're a completely different situation than you. You know what I mean? Like you can't compare someone who's kids are grown and out the house to you if you have young kids because they have the freedom to run around and work all day and do whatever they need, or if they don't have kids at all or not married, or there's a lot of differences in lifestyle that you have to take into account and you shouldn't compare your journey to anyone else's. And that's something I've had to learn a lot. I think the book The Gap in the Gain helped me a lot with that. If anybody wants to check that out. But then one other thing, because I'm gonna transition soon into the last couple of questions that I ask every guest. But one last question before we get there is, I know that you also help multifamily investors and entrepreneurs, and that's this podcast is primarily with entrepreneurship and multifamily and small multifamily. That's what I do as well. Um, but I wanted to tie up, and this is probably should have been one of the first questions to say, how are wealth and creating legacies related to personal growth and high performance? Why is it important for you to have good personal growth and be focused on that in your journey of creating generational wealth?
The simple answer to that is that you won't even be able to absorb the idea as much as you think what wealth is. You don't know yet unless you start to grow internally. I work with investors who have created a little bit of success, but then they get stuck. They get stuck because internally there's something that's holding them back. So they need to deal with that part of them. They're sometimes emotional in nature. Sometimes there are thought patterns and beliefs that hold them back. Sometimes it's their behavior and habits that they have developed. So if you're not growing as a leader, as a human being, as a parent, as a wife, husband, you're going to struggle to build any kind of generational wealth. And my idea of wealth is it's not just related to money. Money is one aspect of wealth. Wealth is also your health. Wealth is also the quality of your relationships. Wealth is also the values that you create within your family and community because you're going to pass on all of them. And to be honest, you could spend we at this point this has been done to that people have passed on a lot of money and wealth and so-called legacy to other people, and within the third generation it's gone because the values were not passed on, the model was not passed on, the growth was not passed on. Usually what people need is a better model. When I was stuck in those moments, what I needed in my family was to look up to somebody's like, you know what, that person did something different. That person was the kind of person who lived his life. That person grew. That person was a leader. I didn't have those examples because I didn't have that outside of my family and go look for it. And this is why this vision was so important to me. It wasn't just about business. It was about that legacy of I wanted my nieces, nephews, cousins, whoever in my family, because we hold on to the people closest to us, not outside, to look and be like, you know what, there was somebody who was successful in this. That would click that switch, and it would have been so much easier for me to go out there and try to find people from all around the world. It took me a long time. But the people, human beings need a model. This is why religions have a model, a prophet or somebody, because that's the living model of what they need to follow. So if you're not growing as a leader, forget about wealth. Even if you do manage to create it because of hustle and grind and your network, it's going to disappear so fast that then not only that, it'll corrupt the next generation as well, because you didn't pass on a model, an example, a value system, a better person for them to emulate. And your family deserves that. Your family needs that. And that is a harder path to do, by the way. That is a much harder path than working 100 hours a week, is to look at yourself and say, where do I need to grow as a person? Do I need to be a better father? Do I need to be a better wife? Do I need to be a better parent? Do I need to be a better communicator? Do I need to be a better human being? What does that look like? That's what growth looks like. And so the people who create lasting legacy, they create a better model for their family, community. They create better value systems. Yes, they create financial freedom to a degree, but more than likely, and this is one of the questions I get a lot of my clients to ask their children, because I have clients who are in their 60s, 70s. They're like, I want to pass on a lot of, I want to pass on this property, these assets. I'm like, have you ever asked your children what they need from you? They're like, no. It's like they're running around trying to do stuff. I'm like, and their children have families and all kinds of things, and they will go back and they'll ask them like, what do you really like while I'm here? What do you need? And they'll answer in these specific ways. It's the most amazing thing. Like, first of all, I want some time with you. Second, what I really need is I want to understand how you did this stuff. They don't really, most of the time they don't even ask that I want the assets or the business or any of that stuff. They just want to understand how they did it. They want to spend time with them. They want to understand. And then all of a sudden, this huge weight gets off their shoulders. Like, they don't really need any of that stuff from me. What they need is a model. What they need is a blueprint.
Yes, I 1,000% agree. That's something, 'cause we do have a trust for our assets to go into, but also part of that is my husband and myself have decided we're going to do like small videos with like mindset things and things like what our thought process was when we were making certain decisions, and just like talking to them about what, what we think and our ideals and all of those kind of things, so that they have more than just the actual asset, the information. And that's part of this show, really. It's why it's called Share the Wealth. The wealth is the information, and that's what we're sharing, and that's what people need in order to either maintain what their parents are passing down or what they want to pass down, or to also just like give that information so their children can build it or do it themselves. Like, the information sometimes is actually, I think most of the time, is more powerful than just giving the assets away, because then, like you said, that's squandered in 3 generations or less. So I love that. I love the answer. Okay. So right now we're going to switch over into this last section, which is called Digest with the Guest, because you give so much juicy information and morsels of goodness that we have to really slowly consume it so that we can really get all of that information into our pores, and it can infuse into our cells, and we really get more powerful with the information and more energized and enthused. So this next question actually is about with Warren Buffett. He said that diversification is protection against ignorance. So what do you think about that statement? What was he meaning by that?
Hmm. That's actually one of the places where a lot of investors struggle in, because they think, for example, a lot of them will look at the statistic that said that most multimillionaires have 7 streams of income. And they'll be like, well, I need to have it as soon as they get started. I need to build that. And when Warren Buffett is talking about this, I don't think he's talking about the starting point. I think he's talking about it as you build out and you stabilize, you need to diversify. In the beginning, most of what you need is actually you need focus. If you look at actually the best entrepreneurs, the best businesses, they focused one market, one product. They refined the quality of that product and built it out to a point, and then they diversified. There's Peter Thiel, Elon Musk's partner. He wrote a book, Zero to One. He said it in a funny way. It's like when rich people don't know what to do their money, they will say, well, I'm diversifying my assets. They don't know what they, so they hand it off to another organization. They'll diversify it for them, which is true. At some point when you build it, you want to protect it because you've worked hard to build it out. But so here's what most a lot of people who get this is the biggest mistake most entrepreneurs and investors will make in the beginning, is that, and from the beginning they will start to diversify, but what they're diversifying is their attention as well. They'll go from one thing to the next thing. Pretty soon nothing gets built. They're in it for 3-4 years, and my clients, I'll get them to go through this process. I'll ask them, what are you working on? And they'll be like 3, 4, 5, 6. Like, how much time are you spending on this? How much energy is going in this and that and that? They have no time, and they will complain that I have no time for my family, this person, that person. I'm like, why do you think you need to spend time on all of these areas? Well, I need to diversify. Like, but you don't know how to run any of these properly. You have no expertise, specialization in any of these areas. So in the beginning, it's focus, attention, specialization, building yourself up, your own growth, your skill sets, your network in one market. Once you build that out to a certain level, then you take that, put it in other assets. And to be honest, there's a I forget his name, but he interviewed a bunch of billionaires. The best billionaires happen to be, and there are not that many billionaires in the world. I think it's like 2000 something. The best billionaires that I think he interviewed like a dozen billionaires. They, even as billionaires, they had one market they were working on, where they had their money in different investment stuff, but as a business, they were focused on one market. These are billionaires, and if you look at the statistics, there are very few people that ever become, I think it's 0.000 something billionaire. But millionaires and multimillionaires always, even they make the mistake of diversifying too much, and they lose focus. And it's very easy to see. As soon as you start a business, and a business takes at least 3 years to get stable as to a point where you understand it, 5 years where you go towards growth. Now imagine within the first 2 years you start another business. Now you slow down both of them to half, then a third one half. Even if you say that this is passive, nothing is fully passive. You'll spend a bunch of time understanding and learning it. All that takes time and attention. So I would say diversify later. First, understand, grow yourself, build skill sets, build your network, focus on one market, and then afterwards you can always diversify. That's my philosophy. That's why I've been able to be much more focused than most people. I've been able to grow fast, and then at some point I'll get to a point where I'm going to diversify a lot. I've done it in terms of passive. But on the active side, I don't diversify too much. I'm in this one market. I'm going to be here for the next 10 to 20, 30 years until I build so much specialization where there's not much competition. And then I can move on to a different market.
Yep, I completely agree with that philosophy. Go deep, build up as you're diving deep into that one area, and then you can go wide. And most of the time, it's, if you're going to diversify, do it where how the wealthy people do it. Like, they put it to somebody who they trust or who's proven to help them diversify it, because they can't put their attention in all those different things. They still are focusing on that one. So I love that. Have you played Monopoly before?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So Boardwalk or Baltic? What's your first choice if you had to pick one for your strategy to kind of win the game or get a leg up, and why?
In the beginning, Baltic, but later on, Boardwalk. I'll pick Baltic in the beginning because whatever you can get that would generate any kind of cash flow is better than trying to hit that big thing that might or might not hit at all. But later on, Boardwalk, because it gives you the biggest bang for the buck and you can stay with it. But if you just have Boardwalk from the beginning and it's that one thing, but I'd rather have a bunch of Baltics and a bunch of smaller assets that slowly produce cash flow. And then later on, you can start to build out and buy the other assets. So that's how I would think about it.